In May 2026, a British dealer walked into a refinery with a vintage 18-carat Omega Constellation. The auction estimate on the watch was £4,000. He walked out with £5,750 in cash. Not for the watch, for the gold inside it. That vintage Constellation did not go into a museum. It did not go into a collection. It went into a furnace. And this is not a rare event anymore. Right now, in every gold refinery in London, New York and Zurich, mainstream vintage luxury watches are being melted down. Because for the first time in modern history, the gold inside them is worth more than the watches themselves. Gold hit $5,600 an ounce in January. Today, it sits around $4,143. That means 18-carat gold, the gold used in nearly every solid gold Rolex, Omega and Longines ever made, is worth about $99 per gram. And your grandfather's dresser drawer might have $5,000 to $15,000 of pure gold sitting inside a watch case. Today, we are opening 10 vintage watches, Rolex, Omega, Longines. We are going to weigh every one, calculate the melt value at today's gold price, and compare it to what the same vintage watch actually sells for on the market. Some are worth more scrapped than sold. Some are protected only by their rarity. And one of them, hidden inside a case designed by the same man who created the Royal Oak and the Nautilus, is trading for less than a quarter of its metal value. That one is at the end. But first, what 18-carat actually means, because most people watching this have no idea how much gold they are holding. Carat is a fraction out of 24. 24-carat is 99.9% pure gold, too soft for a watch case. 18-carat is 75% gold, 25% alloy, usually copper and silver. That is the standard for every luxury Swiss watch case ever made. On the inside of a genuine vintage case, you will find a hallmark stamped 750. That is the confirmation. 75% gold by weight. Every fancy alloy you have heard of, Rolex Everose, Omega Sedna, Cartier Pink Gold, is still 75% gold. The other 25% changes color. More copper makes rose. More silver makes yellow paler. Palladium makes white. The actual gold content is identical. When a refiner weighs your grandfather's vintage watch, they are not paying you for the brand. They are paying for the 75%. Number 10, the Longines Ultra Chron, made from 1967 to 1972. Longines High Beat Chronometer, a workhorse. The 18-carat version has a case weight around 43 grams, roughly 33 grams of gold in the case. Melt value today, $3,267. Now check what the same vintage watch sells for on Chrono24 and eBay. Low end, $2,500. Average around $3,500. At the bottom of the market, a Longines Ultra Chron in 18-carat gold is worth more melted than sold. Not close to melt, below melt. If you have one of these in your family, you are not holding a watch, you are holding a gold coin with a movement inside. Number 9, the Longines Flagship 5-Star. Longines dress flagship in the 1960s. The 18-carat gold version, 40 grams of case, about 30 grams of gold. Melt value, $2,970. Collector market, low end $2,200, average around $3,200. Below the median price, this vintage watch is a scrap candidate. On a mint example, it barely breaks 2 to 1 on melt value. Longines dominated Swiss watchmaking in the 50s and 60s. They won more chronometry prizes than Rolex, Omega and Patek combined. And today, the market values their solid gold flagship at roughly the same price as its metal weight. That is not a niche collector opinion. That is the actual market. Number 8. The Omega Seamaster de Ville 18-carat 1963 to 1970. The de Ville was Omega's dress Seamaster. Slim, elegant, often on leather, but solid 18-carat gold when specified. Case weight 60 to 68 grams. 46 to 51 grams of gold. Melt value between $4,500 and $5,050. Market price, $3,500 to $7,500, which means the lower half of every vintage de Ville transaction right now is below melt. You will see this pattern repeat. Number 7. The Omega Constellation Pan, reference 168.005. This is the exact reference that started this entire conversation. The Pan Constellation from 1966, on a leather strap, 18-carat case, about 55 grams. Roughly 40 grams of gold, melt value close to $4,000. Market price, $4,000 to $6,500. At the low end, this is exactly the vintage watch that walked into that London refinery in May. This is the watch Reuters wrote about. And every single day, more of them follow the same path. Quick pause. Subscribe if you want part 2. When this hits 100,000 views, we cover the Rolex Submariner in 18-carat gold, the GMT Root Beer, the Apollo 11 Speedmaster that Neil Armstrong owned, and the Patek Philippe Nautilus. Bigger names, bigger numbers, some so rare that no refiner in the world would dare melt them. But we are still in the melt squeeze zone. And it gets heavier. Number 6. The Omega Constellation Grand Luxe with the brick bracelet. 1966 to 1970. The Constellation on a solid gold Milanese brick bracelet. Total weight, 131 grams. About 98 grams of 18-carat gold. Melt value, $9,702. Market price, $10,000 to $14,000. This vintage piece still wins on average, but at auction, at estate sales, at the wrong dealer, the low end drops right into scrap territory. Every dollar gold gains makes that gap smaller. The Grand Luxe was Omega's flex piece. Executives wore it. King Farouk wore one, and today it is one hallmark away from being coined. Number 5. The Rolex date just reference 16018, full 18-carat gold Jubilee bracelet, 1977 to 1988. Total weight 136 grams. Roughly 102 grams of 18-carat gold. Melt value, $10,098. Market price, $10,500 to $13,500. That gap is nothing. On a bad example, on a redone dial, on a Frankenwatch, this gets melted. A Frankenwatch is a vintage piece with a replaced dial, swapped bezel, or non-original crown. Those see a 20 to 50% haircut on collector value, which means a Franken 16018 with the same 102 grams of gold is worth $7,000 on the market, but $10,000 at the refinery. The math tells the refiner to win. Number 4. The Rolex date just referenced 1601, full 18-carat gold Jubilee, 1959 to 1977. Total weight around 95 grams, 71 grams of gold. Melt value $7,029. Market price $9,500 to $14,500. The 1601 holds a collector premium above melt. But the premium is small. Here is the twist. Most of the gold sits in the bracelet, not the case. The case with crown, bezel, and case back is only about 20 grams. The Jubilee bracelet is 50 grams of gold on its own. If someone sold you a vintage 1601 on a leather strap with the original Jubilee missing, you just lost 70% of your gold value. Number 3. The Rolex day date reference 1803, the President, 1959 to 1977. This is the vintage watch every US president wore since Lyndon Johnson. Full 18-carat gold case. Solid 18-carat president bracelet. Total weight 120 grams. Here is the breakdown, and this is the number nobody quotes correctly. 74.98 grams of pure 24-carat equivalent gold across the entire watch. The bracelet alone accounts for 51.6 grams of pure gold. The case ring is 13.9, the case back is 5.4, the bezel is 4 grams. That bracelet on its own melts for $5,100 today. Total melt value for the entire watch, roughly $9,000. Market price, $12,000 to $22,000. The 1803 still holds premium, but less premium than any collector will admit. On a beat-up example, on a service watch, on a Franken piece, this vintage president walks right into the fire. Every collector says this watch is safe. It is not safe. It is close. Number 2. The Rolex day date 1807, the bark finish, or, as Rolex called it, the Florentine finish. Same 18-carat gold case as the 1803, same president bracelet, 1961 to 1977. But the case and bezel have a hand-etched chaotic texture that looks like tree bark. Rolex applied this by hand. It was rare when made, and it is rarer now. Here is the myth. Everyone assumes the bark finish uses more gold because of the texture depth. It does not. The etching removes surface material as it adds depth to the valleys. Net weight is roughly the same as the smooth 1803, about 88 grams of gold. Melt value, $8,712. Market price, $14,000 to $24,000, higher than the smooth 1803 because of the finish, not the metal. That is a $5,000 to $15,000 premium for a texture. When gold hits $5,000 an ounce again next spring, that premium shrinks fast. A Frankenbach 1807 with a serviced case or replaced bracelet drops right into refiner territory. Which brings us to number 1, and this is the watch that broke my calculator. The IWC Yacht Club reference 811A, 1969 to 1976. Solid 18-karat gold integrated bracelet. Total weight 176 grams. Roughly 132 grams of gold. Melt value at today's price, $13,068. Market price, $3,200 to $5,300. Read that again, $13,000 of gold. Selling for $3,000. This is not a hidden brand. This is IWC. International Watch Company, Schaffhausen, a 150-year-old Swiss manufacturer that today makes the Portugieser and the Big Pilot, watches that sell for $30,000 to $40,000 new. And here is the twist. The Yacht Club 811A was designed by Gerald Genter, the same designer who created the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, the same designer who created the Patek Philippe Nautilus. Same hand, same era, same integrated bracelet philosophy. A Royal Oak from the same year in gold sells for $75,000. A Nautilus in gold sells for $200,000. And the Yacht Club from the same designer sells for $3,200. Even the refiners have not fully realized it yet. But they will. If you own an IWC Yacht Club in 18-karat gold and it is sitting in a safe, you own an asset priced at less than 1/4 of its metal value. The market is dead wrong on this vintage watch, or the refiners are. And when the refiners catch up, this watch either gets melted or it triples in price. There is no third outcome. That is the 10 watches. 10 vintage pieces where the metal has caught up to the myth. And this is only part 1. If you want part 2, subscribe now. Part 2 covers the Rolex Submariner in 18-karat gold, the GMT Master Root Beer, the Patek Philippe Calatrava, the Universal Geneve Polar Router, and the Speedmaster BA 145.022, the exact reference Neil Armstrong owned. Auctioned last year for $2.1 million. Bigger names, bigger prices, and a set of facts about hallmarks, gold rotors, and refiner economics that nobody has put on video yet. If your grandfather's dresser has any of the 10 watches we covered today, do not sell. Do not melt. Get it weighed, get it authenticated, check the hallmark, because the gold market is still moving up. Every month that passes, the margin between what the watch is worth on paper and what it is worth in a crucible gets thinner. The market is dead wrong on some of these, or the refiners are. In 6 months, we will know which.